Listen, I know what you're thinking. Oh, great. Another story about how humans are special because we can do some weirdly specific thing that advanced alien civilizations somehow never figured out. And you know what? You're absolutely right. That's exactly what this is. But here's the kicker. This time, it's about humming. According to YouTube analytics, 99.3% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. Humming. Not our incredible endurance, not our pack-bonding tendencies, not even our alarming tolerance for spicy food. No, this story is about a sleep-deprived maintenance technician who accidentally became the most important person on a warship because she could hum a tune. Welcome to the universe, folks. It's weirder than you think. Commander Thalrix of the Valdrine Imperial Navy had seen a lot in his 37 cycles of service. He'd witnessed the siege of Canthros Station, survived the Void Plague outbreak on Deck 7, and once watched his weapons officer eat an entire ration pack that had been expired for 6 years. The guys survived that too, which honestly was more impressive than most of their battle victories. But nothing, and I mean nothing, in his extensive military career had prepared him for the sight currently unfolding in his ship's medical bay. 3 Valdrine cubs, each no bigger than a human 5-year-old, sat in the corner of the room, absolutely losing their minds. And when I say losing their minds, I don't mean the cute, sniffly kind of crying you see in holovids. I mean the full-throated, soul-destroying kind of wailing that makes you question every life choice that led you to this moment. The kind that makes you wonder if perhaps joining the military wasn't such a brilliant idea after all. The cub's fur, normally a sleek silver blue, was puffed out in all directions, making them look like particularly distressed puffballs. Their large eyes were wide and luminous with terror, and they clutched each other with tiny clawed hands, creating a ball of misery and noise that would have impressed even the most accomplished opera singer. "How long has this been going on?" Thalrix asked, his head feathers flattening against his skull in distress. The Valdrine equivalent of a migraine was setting in, and he could feel his second stomach churning uncomfortably. His chief medical officer, Dr. Kess, looked like she'd aged 10 cycles in the past hour. 14 hours, sir, since we found them on the transport we rescued. 14 hours. Yes, sir. And they haven't stopped. Not for more than 30 seconds at a time, sir. We've tried sedatives, calming pheromones, nutrient supplements, environmental adjustments, and Ensign Vrel even tried doing that thing with his face that usually makes younglings laugh. Dr. Kess's fur rippled in what could only be described as profound exhaustion. Ensign Vrel is currently in the next room recovering from the experience. The cubs did not respond well. Thalrix sighed, a sound that came from deep in his thorax and conveyed approximately 14 different kinds of weariness. Their parents? Dead, sir. The transport was attacked by raiders. Based on what we found in the wreckage and the ship's logs, their parents hid them in a cargo container before... Well, Dr. Kess didn't need to finish that sentence. They both knew how raids like that ended. The commander's feathers rose in anger before settling back down. There would be time for righteous fury later. Right now, they had 3 traumatized cubs who were literally screaming themselves hoarse and apparently had no plans to stop anytime soon, which presented a unique problem, because this was a warship currently en route to reinforce the 4th Fleet. And the last thing you wanted during a potential combat situation was 3 cubs having a collective breakdown in the middle of your medical bay. Not to mention the morale issue. Listening to terrified younglings scream was doing terrible things to the crew's mental state. The Valdrine were a warrior race, sure, but they weren't monsters. Half the bridge crew had been fighting back tears for the past shift. "Sir," Dr. Kess said carefully, "I know this is unorthodox, but we have the human aboard, Iron Rodriguez from the engineering team." Thalrix's feathers perked up slightly. "The maintenance specialist?" "She has experience with younglings, according to her file. Raised several siblings. And—" Dr. Kess hesitated. In that way people do when they're about to suggest something that sounds absolutely insane but just might work. "Humans have certain auditory capabilities that might help calm them." "You want me to bring a human to deal with traumatized Valdrine cubs?" "I want you to let me try everything, sir. Because right now, those cubs are going to scream themselves into physical collapse, and I cannot in good conscience let that happen." The commander looked at the cubs, who had briefly paused their wailing to take synchronized breaths before launching into another round of misery. "Get the human." Iron Rodriguez was elbow-deep in a plasma conduit when her comm chirped. This was not unusual. What was unusual was that it was a direct line from the medical bay, marked urgent, and when she answered it, the chief medical officer sounded like she was about 3 seconds away from a complete breakdown. "Rodriguez, I need you in medical. Now." Iron pulled herself out of the conduit, leaving her tools where they were. You didn't argue with that tone of voice. "On my way." She'd been on the Retribution's claw for 6 months now, one of 3 humans in the crew of 400. The Valdrine were actually pretty decent to work with once you got past the initial culture shock. They appreciated competence, valued honesty, and had a sense of humor that was surprisingly compatible with her own. Dry, sarcastic, and occasionally dark enough to make you question things. Plus, their engineering systems were beautifully logical once you understood them. It was like someone had taken all the unnecessarily complicated human designs, stripped out the nonsense, and rebuilt everything to actually make sense. Working with Valdrine tech was a dream. The screaming hit her the moment the medical bay doors opened. "Oh, wow," Iron said, stopping in her tracks. That's impressive. How long have they been going?" Dr. Kess looked like she might cry, or possibly start screaming herself. 14 hours. 14? Iron's eyebrows shot up. "Okay, what do you need me to do?" "Make it stop." The doctor's voice was flat. "I don't care how. Use your weird human abilities. Sing, dance, juggle plasma torches. Just please, for the love of the first nest, make them stop." Iron approached the cubs slowly. They were huddled in the corner, and up close, she could see they were shaking. Not just from the effort of screaming, but from genuine terror. Their eyes were glazed with exhaustion, but something kept them locked in this cycle of panic. She'd seen this before, actually. Her youngest brother had been like this after their apartment building caught fire when he was 4. The terror had gotten into him so deep that he couldn't calm down, couldn't sleep, just kept cycling through panic even though he was safe. "Hey," she said softly, crouching down a few feet away. The cub's screaming faltered slightly, their large eyes fixing on her. "Hey, it's okay. I know you're scared, I know." One of the cubs, slightly larger than the other 2, made a sound that was half wail, half whimper. It was somehow worse than the screaming. Iron had learned enough Valdrine to understand their words. But these cubs were too young and too distressed for coherent speech. So instead, she did what her mother used to do. What every human parent had probably done since the dawn of time when faced with an inconsolable child. She started humming. It wasn't anything fancy, just a simple melody, something her mom had hummed to her little brothers. A tune so old she didn't even know where it came from. Probably some lullaby that had been passed down through generations. evolving and changing until it was just a series of notes that meant comfort and safety, and someone is here watching over you. The effect was immediate and frankly kind of alarming. All 3 cubs stopped screaming, just stopped. They stared at her with those huge eyes, their mouths still open mid-wail, fur still puffed out like they'd been electrocuted. The silence was so sudden that Dr. Kess actually gasped. "Don't stop," the doctor hissed. "Whatever you're doing, don't stop." So Irene kept humming. She stayed crouched, making herself smaller, less threatening, and just hummed that simple melody over and over. After a minute, the cub's fur began to settle. After 2 minutes, the largest one took a tentative step forward. After 3, all 3 were moving toward her in a shuffling, uncertain huddle. "That's it," Irene murmured between phrases. "You're okay. You're safe now." When they were close enough, she slowly extended her hand. The largest cub sniffed it cautiously, then pressed its small, furry head against her palm. The other 2 followed, and suddenly Irene had an armful of traumatized alien children clinging to her like their lives depended on it. She kept humming, kept that steady, simple tune going while 3 small beings who had watched their world end decided that maybe, just maybe, they could trust this strange alien who made soothing sounds. "Fascinating," Dr. Kess breathed, pulling out her scanner. "Their stress hormones are dropping, heart rate stabilizing. Whatever you're doing, it's working." "It's just humming," Irene said quietly, still maintaining the melody. "Humans do it for kids all the time. It's calming, I guess. Rhythmic, predictable. The Valdrine don't have an equivalent." Dr. Kess was recording everything on her data pad. "We have tonal communication, yes, but nothing quite like this. The sustained melodic pattern, the lack of words. It's bypassing their linguistic processing entirely and hitting something more primal." "Great," Irene said. "Glad my ability to make weird humming noises is scientifically interesting. Can someone get me a chair? Because I'm not sure how long I need to keep this up, but my legs are already starting to cramp." That's how Commander Thalrix found them 20 minutes later. The human maintenance technician sitting in a chair with 3 exhausted Valdrine cubs piled on and around her, humming a tune that had no words, while Dr. Kess looked on with the expression of someone who had just witnessed a minor miracle. "Report," the commander said quietly. "The cubs have calmed significantly, sir," Dr. Kess replied, equally quiet. "Stress levels are approaching normal. I believe they may actually sleep soon." The human is humming. "Yes, sir." "And this is working?" "Yes, sir." Thalrix's feathers did a complicated ripple that conveyed several emotions at once, primarily confusion and relief. "Why?" "No idea, sir. But right now, I'm not questioning it." The commander watched for a moment longer, then nodded. "Keep me informed. And Rodriguez?" Irene looked up, still humming. "Good work." That should have been the end of it. Cubs calmed, crisis averted. Everyone goes back to their regularly scheduled duties. Except it turned out that traumatized younglings who have recently experienced the worst day of their entire lives don't just magically become okay after one humming session. Who knew? The cubs, now named Pip, Z, and Torin by the medical staff, seemed fine as long as Irene was there humming. The moment she stopped, or worse, tried to leave, they would start working themselves back up into another panic spiral. It was like they decided she was their new security blanket, and they were not letting go. "This is a problem," Commander Thalrix said, standing in his ready room with Dr. Kess and Irene. "We need Rodriguez in engineering. We're heading into a potential combat zone." "I understand." "That, sir," Dr. Kess said. But those cubs need her. If we separate them too soon, they could relapse into a traumatic state that might cause permanent psychological damage. Can't someone else hum? The commander looked at Iron. Can't you teach someone? Iron shifted uncomfortably. I mean, I can try. But when Ensign Vrel attempted it, the cubs started crying again. I think they've specifically bonded to me. Or maybe to human humming specifically? I don't know. I'm not a xenopsychologist. You're a maintenance technician who's somehow become essential to the mental health of 3 orphaned cubs. Thalrix's feathers were doing that thing again, where they conveyed more than words ever could. This is the strangest situation I've encountered in my entire career. And I once had to evacuate a space station because someone's exotic pet started reproducing exponentially in the life support system. Look, Iron said, I can work from medical bay. Bring me my tools, the schematics, whatever needs fixing. I can do diagnostics remotely for anything that doesn't need hands-on work. And for stuff that does need me physically there, maybe we can work in shifts. I'll hum them to sleep, then slip out for a few hours. You need sleep too, Rodriguez. Yeah, well. She shrugged. Welcome to parenthood, I guess. Even the emergency kind. So that's how it went for the next 3 days. Iron essentially moved into medical bay, setting up a workstation in the corner while 3 small aliens used her as a living comfort object. She'd hum them to sleep, then carefully extract herself and run to engineering to handle the critical issues, then race back before they woke up and panicked. The crew started calling her the Bard, which she found both amusing and slightly annoying. But hey, she'd been called worse things. You know what's weird? She said to Dr. Kess on day 3, while Pip dozed on her lap and the other 2 slept piled against her legs. I used to think babysitting my brothers was hard. But at least they spoke the same language and understood when I said I'd be right back. Dr. Kess made a sound that might have been a laugh. How are you holding up? Honestly, I'm exhausted, my back hurts, and I'm pretty sure I've hummed that same tune about 4,000 times in the last 72 hours. But she looked down at the sleeping cubs. They're not screaming anymore. And they ate something today without throwing it back up. So I guess I'm doing okay. You're doing more than okay, Rodriguez. These cubs would have literally screamed themselves to death without you. Their species doesn't have the same parental backup systems that humans do. In our traditional society, if a cub loses its parents, the entire community steps in immediately. But here, on a warship, in the middle of space, they had no one. Until you. Great, no pressure or anything. Then the alarm klaxon started blaring, and everything went sideways. All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, battle stations. Iron's heart rate tripled instantly. That old familiar spike of adrenaline that came from her body, recognizing danger even before her brain fully processed it. The cubs woke up immediately, their eyes going wide with terror. No, 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 Iron said quickly, already humming, trying to keep them calm, even as her own pulse hammered in her ears. It's okay. It's just the alarm. We're safe. Dr. Kess was already moving, securing equipment and pulling up the tactical display. Raiders, same ones that hit the transport, looks like. They tracked us. Of course they did. Because why would anything be simple? The ship shuddered as weapons fire struck the shields. The cubs started whimpering, that awful sound that meant they were about 2 seconds away from full-blown panic. Iron grabbed all 3 of them, pulling them close, and hummed louder, trying to project calm she absolutely did not feel. I need to get to my station, Dr. Kess said, torn. But I can't leave you. Go, Iron said firmly. I've got them. Just go. The battle lasted 43 minutes. Erin knew this because she counted every single one while the ship rocked and shuddered around them. While the cubs clung to her and whimpered, while she hummed that same melody over and over until her throat was raw and her voice started cracking. She hummed through the explosions. She hummed through the screech of stressed metal and the warning sirens. She hummed through the moment when something hit close enough that the lights in medical bay flickered and her heart nearly stopped, thinking, this is it. We're dead. These cubs survived their parents' death just to die here with me. But she didn't stop humming. The cubs never started screaming. They cried, yes. They shook and buried their faces in her shirt and made small sounds of distress. But they didn't panic. They stayed with her, trusting that if the weird human was still making the calm sounds, then maybe things were actually going to be okay. When the all-clear finally sounded, Iron's voice was barely a whisper. But she was still humming. Still keeping that melody going through sheer force of will because she'd be damned if she let these kids down. Commander Thalrix found her there 20 minutes later, still humming, tears streaming down her face that she hadn't even realized were there. 3 small cubs wrapped around her like baby koalas. Rodriguez. She looked up, still humming, because she couldn't seem to stop. The raiders are destroyed. We're secure. You can stop now. She shook her head slightly, tapping her throat, mouthing the words, they need it. The commander's feathers rose in understanding. Then he did something that surprised everyone in the medical bay. He sat down next to her, and in his deep, resonant voice, he began to hum. It wasn't the same tune. The Valdrine vocal structure didn't work quite the same way as human vocal cords. But it was an attempt. A low, thrumming sound that complemented Iron's melody rather than competed with it. Dr. Kess stared. Half the medical staff stopped what they were doing to watch their commander hum at 3 sleeping cubs and an exhausted human. Slowly, other voices joined in. Ensign Vrel, who'd failed at this before but was willing to try again. Dr. Kess herself. A nurse whose name Iron didn't know. Each one adding their voice to the impromptu chorus, creating a strange, alien harmony that somehow worked. And finally, Iron felt like she could breathe, could let someone else take over for just a moment while she recovered. She let her voice trail off, and the cubs stirred slightly, but didn't wake, lulled by the other voices, continuing the melody. Thank you, she whispered, her voice absolutely wrecked. No, Commander Thalrix said quietly. Thank you. You protected 3 cubs during a battle while armed with nothing but your voice. That's the most impressive thing I've seen in 30 years of service. I just hummed a tune, sir. You did what humans do best, Rodriguez. You found a way to keep going when any rational being would have given up. You adapted, you persevered, and you saved 3 lives by refusing to let them fall into darkness. His feathers rippled in what she'd learned was deep respect. The Valdrine have a saying, the strength of the pack is measured in its smallest members. Today, you proved that saying true. Over the following weeks, something strange happened. The cubs started sleeping better. They started eating properly. They started doing the things that young Valdrine cubs were supposed to do, like playing and exploring and getting into moderate amounts of trouble. But every night, at sleep time, they would find Iron wherever she was on the ship and present themselves for the nightly humming session. And every night, she would hum them to sleep, sometimes joined by other crew members who had learned the melody and wanted to help. The tune spread through the ship like a virus, in the best possible way. Engineers hummed it while working on repairs. Bridge crew hummed it during long shifts. Even the commander was caught humming it once while reviewing tactical reports, though he denied it vehemently when called out. "You've created a monster," Dr. Kess told Iron one evening, while watching 3 cubs sleep peacefully in their new quarters. "Do you know half the crew knows that tune now? Is that a bad thing? No. Actually, I think it's helped everyone. The battle was rough on morale. But this reminder that we're protecting something, it's good for them." Iron nodded slowly. "Any word on where the cubs will go once we reach the station?" "They've been assigned to a care facility on Valdrine Prime. Best psychological support, educational resources, everything they need." Dr. Kess paused. "They're also asking if you'd be willing to visit. Apparently, the cubs have been quite vocal about wanting their human to stay." "I'm not their human. Tell them that." As if on cue, Pip rolled over in his sleep and made a small, contented sound. One tiny hand was stretched out in Iron's direction, like, even unconscious, he needed to know she was there. "Yeah," Iron said quietly. "I'll visit." The day they reached the station was harder than she expected. The cubs were being transferred to qualified caregivers, people who actually knew what they were doing instead of a random maintenance tech who just happened to hum good. It was the right thing, the smart thing, the thing that made sense. That didn't make it hurt any less when 3 small aliens clung to her and refused to let go. "You have to go with them," Iron said gently, carefully detaching Z from her arm. "They're going to take such good care of you. And I'll visit, I promise. I'll visit all the time." "But you hum," Torrin said, the first words he'd spoken in Standard, carefully practiced. "You hum the safe song." Iron's throat tightened. "I know, buddy, but I taught the caregivers the safe song. They can hum it too, and..." She pulled out a small device she'd rigged up in engineering. "I recorded it for you, see? You can play it whenever you need to hear it." She demonstrated, and her own voice came out of the speaker, humming that familiar melody. The cubs' ears perked up, even as tears streamed down their furry faces. "Will you really visit?" Pip asked, so small and hopeful it broke her heart. "I promise. Every shore leave, okay? Every single one. You're stuck with me now." Commander Thalrix watched the exchange from the doorway, his feathers rippling in patterns too complex to read. When Iron finally got the cubs settled with their new caregivers and stumbled out into the corridor, he was waiting. "That was difficult," he observed. "Yeah. You know the Navy is requesting you submit a report on your technique. They want to integrate it into emergency response training." Iron laughed, a sound that was half sob. "A report on humming? Seriously? You found a way to calm traumatized cubs during a crisis situation using nothing but your voice and determination. That's valuable information, Rodriguez. That's something we can teach, something we can use to help others." He paused. "You should be proud." "I just did what anyone would do." "No. You did what humans do. You found an impossible situation and made it work anyway. You took 3 beings who had lost everything and gave them hope. That's not just anyone. That's you." Iron wiped her eyes, smiling despite everything. "So, what now? Back to fixing plasma conduits?" "Back to fixing plasma conduits," he agreed. "Though, I suspect you'll be fielding a lot of questions from crew members wanting to learn that tune properly." "Of course I will. Because why would my life ever be simple? But here's the thing about humans, about that weird stubbornness and adaptability that makes the rest of the galaxy shake their heads and wonder how we survived long enough to make it, to space. We don't give up. We don't stop trying. And when faced with 3 traumatized cubs who need comfort in the middle of a crisis, we hum. We hum the simple melodies passed down through generations. We hum until our voices break. We hum because sometimes, in the vast darkness of space, in the aftermath of tragedy, in the middle of a battle, what's needed isn't advanced technology or tactical brilliance or sophisticated protocols. Sometimes what's needed is just one person, stubbornly humming a tune, refusing to let the darkness win. And if that's not the most human thing in the galaxy, I don't know what is. Irene kept her promise. Every shore leave she visited. She watched Pip, Z, and Torin grow up, watched them heal, watched them thrive. They never forgot the safe song, and neither did she. It became their thing, the bridge between species, the reminder that sometimes the strongest bonds are forged not through shared biology or language or culture, but through simple acts of kindness when everything else has fallen apart. Years later, when Pip graduated from the academy and was assigned to his first ship, he would teach that melody to his own crew. "It's what humans do," he'd explained to curious Valdrine who had never heard anything quite like it. "They hum to make things better, and it works." And somewhere on the other side of the galaxy, on a maintenance vessel cataloging spatial anomalies, Irene Rodriguez would be humming that same tune while fixing a stabilizer, not knowing that she'd started something that would spread through the fleet like wildfire, not knowing that she'd accidentally become a legend. The human who hummed, the maintenance tech who saved 3 cubs and taught the entire Valdrine Navy that sometimes the most powerful weapon you have is simple kindness wrapped in a melody. Because that's what humans do. We find a way. We make do. We hum in the darkness. And somehow, impossibly, that's enough.